Last year, I helped start a nonprofit. Our mission was to try to help people get out of poverty with technology. There are about 700 million people in the world who live on less than $1.90 a day. More than half of those people are children. We thought that if we can get somebody who already lives on $1.90 a day just a little bit more money, it would make a big difference in their life. So we got to work. We quickly discovered that our biggest technical problem, our biggest challenge, was identifying people. You can't easily distribute money fairly and efficiently unless you know who people are. Many of the folks that we want to reach live in places where there is no reliable government that we could trust to identify people. They live in failed states, corrupt states. Some people are refugees and they have no state. Other people live in places where the only authorities are the guys with the most guns. So while we knew that identity was a really hard challenge and we might not be successful, we also knew that if we did solve that problem, we could do some really cool things. A basic income distribution, microfinance, banking the unbanked, maybe even helping elections be more fair. So we decided that we were going to focus on building an identity system first. Now, one of the greatest concerns we had as we began building this was that we didn't want to create something that could be easily weaponized by the strong and used against the weak. We needed an identity system that was corruption resistant, that you couldn't take control over by simply seizing a server or by pointing a gun at somebody. Just as important, we needed an identity system that protected people's privacy. So the identity system that we built, or began building, is called CUA, which simply translates into to be. And in fact, that's the only requirement that we have for getting a CUA ID, is that you be a unique, living human. We don't even need to know your name. So as we got to work on CUA, we also started learning more and more about privacy and identity issues, and we realized that these are global challenges. It's important here and everywhere in the world. Now, a few things happened to me recently on a personal level that brought this home. Every year for the past 10 years or so, I've been buying season passes for myself and my family at a wonderful ski area. And up until this year, the season pass was a piece of plastic with a picture on it. Mine, I can't remember anybody ever looking at it. I think after a while, people recognized me and just waved me onto the lift with no questions asked. Actually, once in a while, somebody might make a comment like, hey, it's the middle of the week. Dude, do you ever have to work? Well, a month later, myself or even the wisecracking lift operator would not remember that I was there. This year, the season pass became a smart card with no name or picture on it. It has a chip in it. Now with this chip, you have to have it on your body before you can get on a lift because there's gates in front of the lifts now, and they open up when they detect the chip. The other thing about this chip is that everything we do now, at least at this ski area, can be recorded for myself and my kids. That information, that behavioral information, becomes part of your digital identity. What happens is they take this data, they link it back to your profile, which they already have, and they build avatars of you. And unlike me, who can forget what day I went skiing, those avatars remember everything. They know when you went, remember what day you went. After a while, they know more about you than you do. In another instance, I made a deal with my 11-year-old daughter. She wanted a mobile phone. And I said, fine, but I get to install parental control software on there. When I went to install the software, I found out that I had to agree to a contract. Oops. That contract gave the vendor of the software the right to take everything off my daughter's phone, browsing history, text messages, who she communicated with, and gave them a perpetual, global, non-revocable right, and a right to sublicense it. So in other words, they could sell an 11-year-old's personal data to anybody in the world. I passed on it. Another instance, I tried to protect the privacy of my home network by buying a new router with enhanced privacy features. When I got this home, I found out that I needed to use the vendor's software. And guess what? The vendor's software had a contract that I had to agree to, that while they were preventing other people from spying on me, I had to give the vendor the right to spy on me. So what do I do? From now on, I guess I can bring my attorney with me when I go shopping, and she can interpret all the contracts that I need to sign in order for the privilege of spending my money on products. But even this wouldn't help because I don't know that I'm going to have to sign a contract until I get the product that I bought home and try to use it. Maybe if I try to opt out of it, the device doesn't work as well. Smart devices are really crazy about doing this stuff to us. So, why? Why does everybody seem to want to spy on us? Why does the ski area want to know all my behavioral information? This activity that used to be a refuge for us, we used to get off the grid, is now someplace where I'm afraid that my family's being tracked. Well, there's a short answer to that. Money. It's very lucrative to track behavioral information. And here's the basic business model. Your digital identity, the avatars that are created of you, include not only attributes about you, like your height, your weight, your gender, your address, income level, but also your behavior. What are the 12 things that I did before I bought a new car? What sites did I browse? That behavioral information and attributes are fed into algorithms. Computer programs, call it machine learning, call it artificial intelligence, what have you. Those algorithms predict your behavior and other people's behavior. How likely is another person to buy a new car? How likely is somebody to click on an ad? The vendors of these platforms, the people collecting this information, also realize that you can make better predictions if you intervene in that behavior. And that way you can herd people to a commercial or a political outcome that you want, that's in your interests. So how profitable is this business model? Well, let's take Ford and a couple of other companies as an example. Ford Motor Company had a decent year last year. They made $18,000 in profit per employee. Facebook made $600,000 in profit for each employee. Google, or Alphabet, the parent company of Google, made over $300,000 in profit per employee. So venture capital remarked to me recently that data is the new oil. And there's some truth to that because when you're using a free search or a free social media app, it's not really free. You're free. Your behavior is free, and that is what is driving the profit engines of these companies. Back in 2010, Facebook and the University of California, San Diego, ran a test during the 2010 midterm elections. They put a post in the feeds of 61 million Americans. It was an I voted post. An analysis of this test concluded that that one post resulted in 238,000 additional votes. That may not be a big percentage of 61 million, but when you think about elections in this country, they can be very close. In 2000, George Bush won the White House, and it was decided by 537 votes in Florida. The 2016 election was decided by less than 80,000 votes. So I'm not going to conclude from this one test that somebody picked our president or decided an election, a bad actor, let's say. But I will say it's not ridiculous to argue that they could have. And what is more important in a free society is not who wins any particular election, it's that the process remains free and fair. I would also say that if somebody didn't intervene in our election, they missed a really good opportunity. In this country, we spend more on defense than the next 8 or 9 countries combined. You don't need a big army. You can defeat the United States for less than the cost of one fighter jet, which is about $100 million. You do it by creating an army of trolls, amplifying their message with bots, having them infiltrate social media groups, and then using the power of this platform to push people, to nudge them into an outcome that you want. So, whether or not you're happy with the outcome of the 2016 election is not the point. The point is to keep this process fair and transparent. One of the things we need to do is rethink the way that we do identity. Now, to give an example, take my ski lift example. If I get on a ski lift, that smart card is linked to my identity, which is linked into a database with all profile information about me and my family, and everything gets recorded and becomes part of that identity. If I then come off the slope and go into the bar, and I want to buy a beer. Now, if there's a nearsighted bartender, he might ask me to prove that I'm over 21, and I want my driver's license. That includes an awful lot more information than just my birth date. This information can be cross-referenced to other information. You can get my credit history from Equifax. If anyone's been around for a couple of years, you know that they were hacked a few years ago and lost almost 150 million Americans' private financial history information. They might get wellness information from Fitbit. They could buy location information from my cellular carrier or from Google Maps. Now, this information, people will tell you, well, it's anonymized. They've taken out any personally identifiable information. If you've lived in Massachusetts for a while, you maybe remember a time when some insurance companies had the great idea of taking every state employee's health records and making them available for research. So probably a lot of people here. At the time, the governor assured the public that this is not a problem because all the personally identifiable information has been taken out of this. There was a graduate student in computer science named LaTanya Sweeney at the time that said, cool, let me request this research database. She bought voter rolls for $20, and just for fun, she ended up sending the governor his own personal health records in the mail, including prescriptions that he was taking and diagnosis information. So the weakness here is that when you're giving up too much information, it becomes really easy to cross-reference this stuff and figure out who people are. And to build, again, that avatar of you that is going to be used for somebody else by somebody else for their benefit. Part of the solution, and this is an area that our foundation is working on, is something called self-sovereignty, or self-sovereign identity. That is returning back control of private data to the individual. To take my two examples, if I get on a ski lift, it doesn't have to say Jim Flynn got on a ski lift. It just has to answer a binary question of saying, is he a pass holder or not? If he is, open the gates. That is done with math, with a cryptographic proof that I am a pass holder. Then when I go into the bar and talk to the nearsighted bartender again, and I need to prove that I'm over 21, I don't have to provide my license and all the information on there. I don't even have to provide my birth date. I just have to answer a binary question, or my self-sovereign ID answers a binary question that I am over 21. An important point about self-sovereign identity is that these two proofs have no relation to one another. They don't know that one guy went skiing and then he went into the bar and had a beer. They just know somebody went skiing and somebody ordered a beer in the bar. You can't put those two together. It's much more secure than the way we do things today. If you're paying attention to the news, you see that there are hacks of identity databases, credit card databases, passwords, just about every few days. So it's pretty clear that the way we're doing it now is broken, and this is a solution to that problem. Now, when I talk about individual sovereignty, I'm not only talking about a technology, but I'm talking about a series of principles. That is that the user, the individual, has control over what is disclosed, to whom, and how it's used. And there's two other really important principles that go along with that. One is the right to delete, or the right to be forgotten. If I'm using a service and they've collected tons of information about me from either I've given to them or they've bought or acquired from other sources, I should be able to tell them to delete it. And they should have to delete it, or there should be penalties. The other one that is important from the point of view of competition is that if I don't like a service and I want to move all of my information to another service, I should be able to do that in addition to my entire social graph. These principles have been enshrined in at least one law. The European Union has been leading the way on privacy, and they've implemented something called the General Data Protection Regulation, which actually specifies these principles. I don't believe it goes far enough, but it's a great step in the right direction. There are counterarguments that you hear all the time. There's economic counterarguments, technical counterarguments. The one I hear a lot is, well, the technology enables you to do it, so you can't fight that. You got to go where the tech allows, where the money could be made, and you're not going to win that battle. So just give up, surrender. There is no privacy. Forget about it. People consented anyway to, as I discussed earlier, some of these one-sided contracts where the other side has all the information and all the power. And they push you, they manufacture consent to these contracts. There have been times in our history where we've had to counter economic and technical arguments like this. Slavery was one. Depending on where you lived in the country, there were powerful economic forces that wanted to preserve the institution of slavery, but we did get together and say, this isn't okay. Child labor was another. They even used technical arguments, saying, well, machines have to be built small, so you can't put a grown man in front of it. He'll have to crouch down, he might get his big hands caught in it. So we need to use children for this. Well, we got together and we said, no, that's not okay. It's also not okay to profile an 11-year-old's behavioral data and sell it to third parties. It's not okay for my cell phone company to sell my location data, or my wellness company to sell my health information to somebody else. Now, we're going to have to deal with this. You're going to hear more and more about digital identity, digital privacy issues. So it's a fight that we're all going to have to take. We need it to protect elections, protect our ability to make decisions on our own. Fortunately, free societies have faced challenges before and overcome them. Sometimes they were pretty scary challenges. It didn't always look like we were going to prevail in the beginning. Now, fortunately, I don't think anyone here is going to have to storm a beach under machine gun fire. But what I want you to do is I want you to start holding people accountable. That starts with the companies that make profit from your digital avatars, from your private information. Okay? But that's not really going to be enough. Upton Sinclair once said, it's really hard to get somebody to change when their salary depends on not understanding. I would update it for this context and say, it's going to be really hard to get a company that is fabulously successful and profitable to change what they're doing, when what they're doing is precisely what's made them fabulously successful and profitable. So be skeptical when they say that they're going to work with you. I'm not saying anybody's bad. In fact, anybody that I've met at any of these companies seem to be terrific. And I'm sure that they mean well. The problem is the economic incentives are perverse. So, if we can solve these issues around digital identity and privacy, then maybe we'll be able to also do things that help some of the worse off people in the world have a little bit of a better life. And at the same time, we might be able to fix our own democracy. Thank you.